I think you would have to be a psychopath not to feel nervous about a second novel if the first one goes well.
There's a few explicit scenes which, from a woman's perspective, it was just divine to read because, that's actually how our bodies work, as opposed to like he looked at her and she quivered. Nell and Eve speak on the phone. Do they get back together?
Hello and welcome back to the Bibliophiles. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Kaya.
Before we get started on today's episode, I would just like to say on behalf of both of us, thank you so much for making the time to be with us today. Whether you're on the school run, doing the laundry, or you're on your way to work, we are just so appreciative of you making the time to be with us. So thank you.
So this is a book club episode with a bit of a difference because though we are going to be very excitingly interviewing Madeleine Gray, author of Chosen Family, we have also picked, as you all know, Giovanni's Room, which is an iconic classic.
What a book.
And the reason why we chose these together is because there are very, very much inherent themes of self-loathing, love, identity, particularly queer identity, the lies that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And we are going to be looking at this important piece of literature, looking at who James Baldwin was, the impact that he has had on our culture, then linking it to Chosen Family. So whether you previously have read Giovanni's Room and loved it and want to hear a conversation, or have not read it, which so many people haven't.
I hadn't read it.
It's a powerful, slim book. We are going to be your one-stop shop, particularly if you're a student who's about to write an essay. We hope that this will help you.
I also think it's a great one to get stuck into if you're just getting started with the classics, but we'll talk about that momentarily. We should also say our interview with Maddie Gray, which is upcoming in this episode, you're not going to want to miss it. However, it is filled with spoilers. So if you've just started Chosen Family, you're about to start it, or you're in the middle, you might want to skip past this one and come back to it once you've finished it, because you won't want to miss it. But also, I don't want to spoil the end for you.
And I get us answers-ish. So upcoming here from the sections, just to give you a little bit of housekeeping. First, we're going to chat to Maddie, and then we're going to start on Giovanni's Room. And then very excitingly, next month's book club picks. And for
They're
us,
such good ones, I have to say. I'm so excited about them.
First of all, the new book is literally everywhere.
I am hooked. I've just started it. I'm absolutely hooked.
There's a lot of crossover with the classic that we've chosen.
Which I don't think we really thought of. We just really wanted to read it. And
we did research and was like,
and then
this
we're
is
like, we have to put them together. It's perfect.
And for our Substack subscribers, we're going to have an exclusive with Maddie Gray for you with our 8 questions only quick fire. And there are some moments of absolute hilarity.
Yeah, you won't want to miss that one.
You told me that you were staying up for hours, like just inhaling Giovanni's Room and Chosen Family, these 2 books you absolutely
I really, loved them.
Took in one setting. And what helped you stay up and be focused was a very important part of your daily routine that we are going to talk about for a minute. London Nootropics.
London Nootropics. So I think if you've listened to this podcast before, or you know me, you'll know that I love my coffee, and I definitely drunk far too much of it. However, since switching to a cup of London Nootropics in the mornings, I have actually felt, bizarrely, that one is enough. And I am not getting any of those coffee type jitters that I used to get around lunchtime. I mean, I'm not going to do an impression of myself, but it was something like, like this. It's just not a good look or not a good vibe. So London Nootropics are our sponsors for this podcast, but they wouldn't be if we didn't feel happy shouting out about their amazing products. And I have to say, they are so effective. The one that I've really enjoyed is Flow, and I find that it's given me such focus in the day as well, which is something that I definitely need.
Don't we all? I think I'm beyond help and just need like absolute sedation. The coffee has adaptogens, but also caffeine, and looks like Charlotte Tilbury for coffee.
It does. Well done to my daughters for pointing that out, but it really does.
But someone ordered it and told me about that they had ordered using our discount code Biblio, and they were like, it's very luxurious.
It really is.
Like, I'm going to put this out on my coffee table because it looks like one of those nice candles, the diptyque candles, and then London Nootropics. It's a bit luxe, girls.
To get our discount code, all you need to do is head over to londonnootropics.com, where the discount is Biblio.
And now we come to our interview with Madeleine Gray. She is coming to us all the way from Australia. And literally she can see the Opera House from her window.
And yet she was, unfortunately for her, having to look at us to have the conversation. But there you go.
We are so astonishingly delighted to be joined by our frontline correspondent all the way from Australia. Maddie, thank you so much for joining us, the wondrous author of Chosen Family, which is her second novel, which I think I read this in 45. I literally was like, what's going to happen?
Inhaled is the word. I also inhaled it, and I don't normally do that.
Yeah,
I sat and basically told everybody to leave me alone. It was one of those, Maddie. It's a compliment.
Thank you. That's so nice.
Though I do have a bone to pick with you, Maddie Gray.
Go off.
We will get to that in one of the questions. Okay? 'Cause do I like not knowing the exact conclusion? No. So this is going to have to be a world exclusive because you're going to have to tell us how this concludes.
Stay tuned, everyone. Yeah, that was the secret.
And Australia disappeared from the map. Sophie.
Right. Well, Maddie, as Kaya said, thank you so much for joining us. So, listeners, just to give you a little bit of info about the astonishingly brilliant author who joins us today. Maddie Gray is a critic and writer from Sydney. She has a master's in English from the University of Oxford and a PhD in feminist literary theory from the University of Manchester. Her first novel, Green Dot, which actually I also inhaled, won the Matt Ritchell Award for New Writer of the Year, the 2025 Russell Prize for Humour Writing, and was shortlisted for the debut of the year at the 2025 British Book Awards. It truly was an instant sensation. And Maddie has been described as a writer with a brilliantly sharp and perceptive voice, one who writes with humour and emotional precision, who captures the messiness of human relationships with striking honesty, and one that I think is totally, totally accurate. You are someone who is totally unafraid to explore the uncomfortable truths of intimacy. Welcome, Maddie Gray, to the podcast. We are so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you, and what an introduction. Can you come to all my social events?
We can. We are now your personal
If it means I get to come to Australia,
no,
I'm in.
I'm not going. Sorry. There are spiders, Maddie. I've seen TikToks, okay? Unless there's an armed guard. So my parents did go and didn't see a spider, and the Barrier Reef is obviously a dream. So, Chosen Family, girls, why you have to read this book. So it captures that awkward phase of being a teen in school, the incredibly Machiavellian, complicated politics of being a teenager and the ferocity of teenage girls. But also, and I love how you juxtapose that with queer community, the warmth of camaraderie and identity, the undercurrents of self-loathing that we all face, some more than others. At the heart of this book is Nell, who at the age of 12 accepts that her life will be a friendless existence. She has the most overbearing of parents that only prize academia and social standing. And when a new girl arrives at school, Evie, has a wicked sense of humour and an unshakable confidence, though that is also a bit performative, but, as we all are, really, let's be honest. And you have interspersed with the chapters of their teenage years, their time as college students and adults, where they have a child and they both love each other, but they don't really confront those feelings. And it's all about sexual confusion and yearning, deep yearning. And also, and this is the part that really spoke to me, the kind of political undercurrent. There's a lot in here about social parameters of family, and it's just very clever, very funny, and very moving.
Deeply profound, I have to say. We totally
we don't
loved it.
just ask anyone
exactly.
Come on our podcast.
We pick the books we love.
Yeah.
And we really love this one. Maddie, I have to ask you, I know that there's a phrase for this, but obviously now I can't quite think of what it is. Let's call it the challenges that surround the second novel. So, you wrote Green Dot, which quite frankly, I would love to talk about in depth another time. It really was absolutely brilliant. So sharp and perceptive, and it was hugely raved about, and all the praise you got was so thoroughly deserved. Your debut novel, I mean, that does not just happen to anyone. Well, it happens to people who are hugely talented, but we know that there are lots of hugely talented writers who don't get coverage, and that's just the way that the industry sometimes works. But your book was very hyped, and it was absolutely deserved. It was brilliant. What I wanted to ask, coming off the back of that, to write another book, how did you find that? Was it challenging? Did it rev you up to do it? Or did it make you think, I need a little bit of time to kind of process and get back into the writing process? I'd love to know if you could let us know a little bit about that. That would be fab.
I think you would have to be a psychopath not to feel nervous about a second novel if the first one goes well, because as you say, there are so many talented writers in the world whose books do not get press. And I worked in a bookshop for quite a while, and I saw how many brilliant books came out that didn't, do anything sales-wise, which was ridiculous to me, but that's the way the market works. Mm-hmm. After Green Dot, which was such a whirlwind, I mean, what we have to think about as well is the publishing world works so slowly. So I'd sold Green Dot, and then it was like maybe a year and a half before it came out. And then there was publicity, and that took a while. By the time the publicity for Green Dot was done, I had actually had quite a bit of time after I'd finished writing it. So I'm not a writer who immediately has another idea on the go. I very much am a one idea person.
I hear that.
When I'd sold Green Dot, I finished my PhD because I just wanted to get that done, so that I could just kind of have that put away, because that was mentally very challenging work that was kind of hanging over me. I think any PhD student listening to this will know that it's the worst.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And unrewarding, but the worst. Yeah. And then I struggled definitely for some months, because I was like, I don't have another story to tell. I knew how to write that story. I don't know how to write another one. My now wife, Bertie, is a musician, and she has, released many albums. And she was actually really helpful to me, because there is the whole second novel syndrome, as you talk about, second album.
That's it, second novel syndrome.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. Thank you for that.
And she kind of said to me, darling, it will be second novel, it's hard, but also third novel will be hard, and fourth novel will be hard. They'll all be hard. And the second one is only special because, the discourse says it is so. Every work of art is hard to make.
I love that.
It's kind of depressing, but kind of hopeful.
Yeah.
It's reassuring, isn't it? That this process is going to be hard at whatever stage you are at.
She got me her mum actually got me a membership to the Art Gallery of New South Wales, which is kind of near where we live. And I just wandered around and looked at art for quite a while, maybe 2 months.
Wow.
And just read other people's books. Slowly, a kind of idea began to germinate, which I was thrilled about. But that being said, I'm now kind of in the very early stages of writing my third book, and it's really hard again.
Yeah.
So
are you back to the art gallery? You going back?
Back to the art gallery.
It's been 6 months in the gallery.
Exactly.
Obviously, Chosen Family was our book club pick. And what we do is we also choose an older book that either we want to read together or that we think deserves more hype.
I'd never read this one coming up.
Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin was one that we picked because I had read it and loved it. And I felt that when I was reading about Chosen Family, what resonated was the self-loathing and the shame that is so inherent within the characters dealing with their sexuality and identity, but also that concept of escaping from the home and trying to create for yourself a whole other life, which David does in Paris. But I wanted to focus on the theme that connects these together for me, which is that self-loathing and the shame that surrounds sexuality. Was that always in your mind a very important part of Nell and Evie's life? They felt like such real fleshed out characters. Was that something that germinated at that initial stage, or did it just come with the flow of writing?
I think it did come at the initial stage, because as with Green Dot, I kind of planned it all out in my head vaguely before I write, and so I know the ending before I've begun. So I needed to know how the arc would work. And it is a question when you're writing a queer novel, do I present queer lives as full of joy and happiness in order to negate the kind of narrative that queerness is full of shame and sadness? Or do I try and go for a bit more complexity and risk alienating people or making people feel sad when, they should be reaching for queer joy? So it's it's tricky. I think with Nell and Eve, the only way that their relationship works in terms of the narrative arc is that it needs to be absolutely seated in Eve's self-hatred. Yeah. Otherwise, the resentment and the love, which are kind of two sides of the same coin for them, that's kind of the main kind of thematic that runs throughout the whole book. And if Eve didn't have that kind of chip on her shoulder, the power plays wouldn't work for the plot. But in terms of like my own experience, I feel like I'm queer, and I didn't come out in high school because it just wasn't like a safe thing to do. That would have been a very bad idea for me at the school that I was at. And that really did mean that I had a kind of second adolescence when I went to university, because I was kind of discovering how to be an adult without having any kind of like teenage romantic entanglements. And that's quite a particular experience that I know a lot of queer people have had, and I hadn't really seen it reflected in fiction, particularly with female or non-cis male queer characters. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted to look at that and then see how shame and self-hatred, what we can do with them, whether we let them grow in us and kind of, whether that makes us kind of like a knobbled old tree full of hatred, or whether we can try and like grow shame and self-hatred into something more beautiful, which is the struggle that Eve goes through for the whole book.
That's so interesting. And I actually want to touch upon the point you make, because one of the, I guess, the dynamics in the book that really got to me was Nell and Eve, and then in comes Naomi. So, and that struggle when you're that age in school, that period, I guess you're going from child to adolescence, and you're kind of trying to suss things out, work out who your friends are, and those shifting dynamics. And that scene, the sleepover, where Eve is left out. She sleeps on the floor, and the other two girls, they're sort of having a great time, and they get to share the double bed, and Eve's kind of cast aside on the floor. And there is that moment after. This really spoke to me, as when I look back on my own childhood, just that feeling of being, those times when you felt you didn't quite fit in for whatever reason, or you were excluded. I know that when I look back, year 8, which is when we're 12, it's our second year in high school here. I remember having a lot of those moments where I felt like I didn't fit in. And when I read that part of the book, I literally felt it under my skin. You took me back, and you don't need to apologize. You took me back to quite a challenging time for me. And I thought it was incredible how you did that. And I wonder if you can, when you wrote those scenes, did those directly relate to experiences you had in school? Is there more you can say on that? Because I felt like it must have been, because it was so real to me and it wasn't my story.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, not the like exact dynamics of these characters, but I went to an all-girls school. I don't think I actually could have written Chosen Family unless I went to an all-girls school, because it's quite a specific microcosm of society. I guess when I was writing those scenes, I was thinking about, you're right, just moments where you love someone so much, you think you're your best friends, and then something shifts and suddenly you're on the outer. Because you're young, you're like, 12 or 13 or whatever, you don't have the lexicon to explain how you're feeling. It's all too embarrassing and awful. And so at that age, so much is left like fully unsaid. And it's a challenge for the girls throughout the novel. But at that time, a social dynamic can shift so quickly
Oh,
in high school. And
Absolutely.
suddenly, you know, you
One
don't
day
have
to the
your
next,
one day to the
1
next.
hour to the
Exactly.
next, I think.
Yeah. And I feel like in fiction at least, the high school kind of dynamics are sometimes pushed to young adult fiction or to other genres because they're kind of not seen as, you know, mature enough to be in an adult contemporary fiction novel. But a lot of me writing this book was trying to kind of restore dignity and complexity to that time in these women's lives because it's you know what happens when you're 13 kind of stays with you forever, I feel.
Really.
And I don't know why we wouldn't give that as much thought as to, you know, years in your 20s or 30s or 50s or whatever.
so true. I went to an all-girls school. I can safely say that I actually very much felt that I was Lake because I was the kind of kid that, you know, would spout political stuff and everyone would just look at me and be like, are you all right there? And I just thought, okay, I almost feel like that would be me. So Lake is the child of Nell and Eve, and she is just the most vivacious, brilliant character. And actually, the themes of parenting and chosen family, particularly through a feminist lens, feminist nonfiction and third wave, second wave feminism is one of my absolute obsessions. And though you deftly and very nuancedly, through dialogue, explore the concept of chosen family versus biological or inherited relationships, the trauma that we pass on to our children, but more specifically, the almost social pressure to have children and why people have children and why they have children in the way that they do was fascinating. So for everyone that hasn't read the book, I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a scene in a bowling alley when Nell and Eve reconnect and they're looking at these parents that most of whom don't want to be there, surrounded by squawking children. And they're just like, are they even happy? Like, what is happiness? Why have they chosen this path? Are we all just on a conveyor belt? And actually, what's so powerful about queer families is that there's such an inherent choice. You're almost fighting against society to be accepted. And a book that it really made me think of, which I have here, is Detransition Baby by Tori Pieces.
Thank you for that comparison. I love that book.
I love this book. And what it taught me was I have never appreciated the inherent privilege of like just being able to think that that you can have children, and I had two, and that immense difficulty which many people face of like having to persuade people every day of who they are, and also the intensity of wanting to mother. And what is interesting about Eve is that she almost becomes a mother to deal with her grief, but also challenges in every way the concept of motherhood. And I wanted to know whether that reflects your own parenting style, whether, you know, through your academia, you have also explored that concept of chosen family.
I haven't specifically looked at it in my academic work. That being said, I did write one of the chapters in my PhD on The Argonauts by Maggie
Nelson, what a book.
Which is a beautiful book about, you know, chosen family and making family differently. So actually I haven't thought about that. That was probably in there somewhere. It's interesting because the chosen family conversation, when it kind of started in my life, obviously I am queer, I have a wife, we have a child, he is, you know, donor consent, like, you know, there's a donor, there's, you know, lots of parties involved. But I was more thinking about, to begin with, just the pressure on women in general, straight or queer, to have children when they reach, generally, at least in my kind of social circles, when you hit 30, it's kind of like everyone's like, you should have a baby. The pressure that my friends who are single felt because, you know, their biological clocks are ticking and they didn't have a partner, but they want to have kids, but they don't want to wait for a partner. They don't necessarily want a single parent. And I was just spitballing with my mates. I was like, why do you not just have a baby with your friend? Like, it just makes so much sense to me because your friends are people who, you know, your values hopefully align with them. You know, they've seen you through thick and thin. Hopefully, if there's no sexual kind of undercurrent that simplifies things.
Yeah.
And, it just seems kind of like obvious to me. But then, I started thinking about, but then how would that work? What if one person gets a partner? What if, how do all these other things play into it? And so it kind of started as a very convoluted hypothetical in my mind. But the concept of chosen family was also already playing there because, as a queer, I'm very lucky. My biological parents are great and were very accepting of me. But I have lots of friends who didn't experience that. And so we are kind of like family. Me and a lot of my friends, we look after each other and we cherish each other, and we know more about each other than anyone else does. And I really wanted to kind of show that love and family is a choice. It's not just something that's there.
I think with Green Dot as well, as chosen family, there are some really serious themes that are discussed. As you say, we're looking at family, identity, shame, self-loathing. But I think one of your great skills, Maddie, is that your writing is at many points so funny, like genuinely laugh out loud funny. And I should say that I don't normally love humor in, that makes me sound really depressing.
She's very highbrow.
I like dark. No, I like dark and twisted. Oh dear, there we go. Just
Nietzsche and Wittgenstein. I don't really care.
Yeah, Sophie needs something really
I love
twisted.
the humour that you show. I mean, like, I love Marcus and Tay. I love Tay's mum. And
sorry, Lake is the funniest character.
Yeah, Lake's really
Communist
funny.
Socks, so like everything. It's
you
just
have
there.
that emotional rawness, but with genuine humour. I mean, how do you do that? Is that something that comes very naturally to you as you write? Is it something that you're conscious about wanting to achieve as you go?
I don't know. I think that I enjoy a joke. I think
I do too.
a convivial, jovial person.
Yeah.
I think part of it is because both the books I have written are, if you take away the humor, quite sad, like quite sad stories. And so if you didn't have the humor, I'm conscious that I want people to enjoy reading. I am, because I'm a reader as well. And I want to have a good time even as I'm feeling deep things. So I'm conscious of that. But more so, the reason why the books have lots of jokes in them and hopefully are funny is because writing is a solitary task. And I'm sitting by myself for, 8 hours a day. And if I wasn't making myself laugh, I mean, I just couldn't do it. It's really, it's for me personally, just to kind of crack myself up. But I think as well, something interesting is that, well, I find this interesting, is that the two books that I have written are in like contemporary parlance. They're in the contemporary world, and the lexicon is the lexicon that I know. So it's quite easy for me to create humor in scenes because I know the way that dialogue would work. And it's more the book, the project I'm doing at the moment is not set now. And
when is it set?
A lot harder to create humor in dialogue when you're not like 100% au fait with the lexicon of the time, which is a challenge that I didn't really realize until.
And the culture and the politics, like so much of your humor is suffused with our time.
The zeitgeist.
Yes.
It really is.
Yeah, exactly. And everything is an amalgamation of cultural references. We live in a memified time where we relate via images and videos and pixels. So it's interesting to create humor now. I'm trying to, without that kind of crutch is too critical a word of myself, but it's a different way of doing it.
Yeah, but it's what's natural to you and your own references. And I think that's more what it is, if anything. Makes sense that it would be harder. Now I need to know more about the new project.
Yeah.
Tell us more, Maddie.
Yeah, you will have to tell
Go
us
on.
more. What I don't forgive you for, what I have a problem with.
Go on.
Okay, so now this comes
Maddie,
to the more
proper issues.
So first of all, either Eve is a psychopath because like she had to know that Nell was in love with her, number one. And yes, she was very hurt as a child, but you're very nuanced, and it's like, what is really the story there? And there's all this yearning, and there's a few explicit scenes, which, from a woman's perspective, it was just divine to read, because that's actually how our bodies work, as opposed to like, he looked at her and she quivered. And all the romantasy books, and I am a romantasy reader. I'm the kind of reader that can read like the Iliad and then go to like Fourth Wing. So that is my vibe.
That's a mashup.
But, and like if he's 6'4", tattooed with wings, I'm there. But how revolutionary to read a book from like a mindset that clearly understands a female body. I was waiting, Maddie, and I do go to the end. I am that person. I don't mind a spoiler. I want to know what's going to happen. But you did not think it to gift us with a conclusion. Okay. So you took a few hours of my life. You now have to account for that. Nell and Eve speak on the phone. Do they get back together?
In case it's not clear, Chaya doesn't love an open ending.
I really don't deal well with life.
With them. But I'm the opposite. I'm okay with ambiguity. Although I'm going to be honest, I still want to know, in your mind, where are they?
Yeah,
what are they doing now?
I can't deal with the unknown. This is the problem with living and not knowing what's going to happen the next day. So we're going to need some answers.
Yeah, I'm like imagining that life might be quite challenging for you.
Thank you so much for acknowledging my pain and trauma, because I really do struggle with
there's another
not knowing how things are going to play out. So do they end up together?
I'm not going to tell you, but I think that the place where I leave the book is a place where like that potential for it to work out exists. And if you're a nihilist, you can see it in the other way. But really, what they're working towards the whole novel is honesty. Honesty and genuine forgiveness. Because, at times in the novel, they both find themselves on one side of a kind of power dynamic where it feels really good to suddenly have the upper hand. And even if you think of yourself as a good person who loves people, it's quite challenging to give that up. And so at the end, I think my original ending, I had a line that was like, Eve loves Nell, Nell loves Eve, or something like that. And I don't know if it stayed, but to me that meant they love each other and the reader can work out whether they think that's romantic.
Well, Maddie, she dials. Nell loves Eve, Eve loves Nell. It is possible that Eve and Nell might finally say what they really mean to each other. It's possible. Yeah. Ambiguity, darling. No, that they both might listen.
Eve picks up her phone. She dials. I actually think it's pretty clear.
Nuh-uh.
You just want to listen to the conversation. Yes, you just want to hear them on the phone.
Angel, I've spent 254 pages waiting for the conversation. I get the conversation. I deserve the conversation.
Maddie, you've heard her.
I loved it. Do you know what?
Write an extra chapter just of the chat.
I will say though, like just briefly, that I was like thinking about doing a much worse ending for both of them. So this is like,
and then they died in a car crash. No, I'm sorry. What I will say is that you have literally just put words on a page and created life. So the fact that I care, I really like, if I'm not into a book within 2 minutes, there's not much you can do to persuade me. I've promised Sophie many times I'd read something and then haven't. I really like, I'm all or nothing. And the fact that I wanted to know so desperately, I think is a sign of how
much
strongly I loved the characters and wanted to know what happened.
Thank you.
So
I want the best for them. Obviously, for me, because I spent a lot of time with them, I think it would be absolutely brilliant if they worked through their neuroses and were able to be in love. But I think the main thing that I would like for them is just to be able to get through whatever their fuckery is so that they can look after their daughter together.
Yeah.
That's not a nice way of putting it, actually. I think that's what I would want that for them too.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to know. Okay. But that does not take away from its brilliance. Thank you, Maddie. We are so incredibly grateful that you have joined us today, all the way from across the globe.
Across time. It feels like that, looking at the dark outside your windows. But really, thank you for making the time, Maddie.
I can't show you because the lighting's crap, but you can actually see the Sydney Opera House on the window.
What a flex.
Oh, my word.
That's such a insouciant way to be like, I actually just live in the middle.
And instead, you're looking at us.
It's in my son's bedroom. So my partner and I, we don't have a view. He has the view.
Obviously.
And so sometimes he'll wake up and be like, where's my harbour bridge?
Oh.
Okay, King.
Yeah.
He's peaked too early in life.
Yeah, literally, babes.
Where's my harbour bridge? I love that.
Okay, I loved that interview so much. And also we just filmed the Substack thing and she said the magic word
brilliant.
to me.
Yeah, she did. You'll see. Well,
she said a few magic words, but there was one character in history that I wanted to name my daughter after. And when she said that was the person she wanted at her dinner party, my reaction was visceral and a bit over the top.
That would be a great dinner party.
I just know that all my friends and like my sister in particular,
hi Dina,
is going to listen and be like, did someone actually?
Your kindred spirit.
Anyway, we really are. But the idea of emotional honesty, the messiness, and particularly the self-construction, that's what really connects Chosen Family to Baldwin. And I feel that James Baldwin is such a significantly important character, author, personality, writer of nonfiction and fiction. I read Giovanni's Room in university, and rereading it for this was a totally different experience.
How so?
I just think that I was a cocky 20-year-old who was flourishing, having the time of my life in uni, and reading about someone that was so mired in shame. I just felt a bit, I'm so cool, I'm reading this. It was almost performative, like just being completely honest, it was a book that I was very happy to tell people I was reading. Right. And it's obviously very short, but I really felt like I was part of the conversation. And I'm reading it thinking of the depths of the familial relationships and what David felt and how this must have corresponded to Baldwin's life
in that time. So I'm coming at this from a different perspective. I had not read Giovanni's Room. I actually hadn't read any books by James Baldwin. I knew about James Baldwin, but I had not read any of his writing. And when you suggested this, I thought, actually, that's good. It will force me to read a book that I've heard is a great book, that is a classic. It arrives, it's nice and slim. Good starting point for me, who doesn't read loads of classics. I mean, I find it really difficult to articulate what this book meant to me. What I will say for sure is that if anyone asks me to borrow my copy, they are not having it. This is a book that I will not lend now.
Really?
Absolutely. When I finished it, I almost was frozen in my thoughts. I just couldn't get over what I'd just read. And the only reaction, the only word that came to me was perfect.
You think this is the perfect novel?
This might be the perfect novel. And I actually put up an Instagram reel about it, which I just sort of did as I'd finished it, because I felt like it was so in the moment. And so many people underneath kind of commented in agreement, saying that when I said perfect novel, they were thinking of this one. There is something about this book. It just got to me in a way that I find it hard to explain, but I will try as we chat.
So our first impressions were the intensity, emotional claustrophobia, and how quickly it can be read, versus how long it lingers.
I mean, that's it. It will linger forever, but yet it's so quick.
And its brevity is part of its force. It doesn't sprawl, it compresses.
But I think it's also how precise the writing is. Every word feels deliberate and meant to be, which is such a skill.
So who was James Baldwin? We're going to look at themes. We're going to be looking at the story of the book. We'll tell you very quickly what it's about. But I think it's so important for anyone listening who hasn't come across James Baldwin before. Let us educate you. Let us tell you about him. He's so important. He was born in 1924 in Harlem, New York. He died in 1987 in France. He was a novel, essayist, playwright, and a very important public intellectual. He was closely associated with the civil rights movement, and he was a revolutionary. He was openly gay at a time when that was extremely dangerous, socially and professionally. He is considered a clarion moral voice of the 20th century. He changed how America talked about race. He wrote essays. Notes of a Native Son is one of my favorite nonfiction books that confronted white America's understanding of race, and he refused simplification. And his books are suffused with emotional, psychological complexity. And he made readers confront injustice, but their own complicity. And someone else wrote, he brought queer desire into serious literature.
I guess another interesting point, and maybe we should have said it to Maddie, but thinking about it now, Giovanni's Room was his second novel.
Yes.
Just as Chosen Family was Maddie Gray's is her second novel. And we were talking about the curse of the second novel. Well, this one, I mean, it really is such a special book. I think that, he was such a when you talk about James Baldwin's life and then you read this book, you realize just how important it was that he could write this way at this time. I mean,
and he's writing about two white characters, which was, you know, something. I think the publishers had a problem even wanting to put it out. So its themes: shame, queer desire. It's not sensationalist. It was published in 1956. It recounts a tormented love affair between its narrator, an American called David, and Giovanni, an Italian bartender.
Or the night they meet. I'm just thinking back to it now.
In a Parisian cafe.
And Paris as this kind of almost a central character in her own right. And I absolutely adore Paris. You will be there when you are reading this.
And actually, what's interesting is that we have just done a deep dive into the secret history. And in this book, you also get the spoiler in the first few lines.
You do.
You get told.
Medios res.
Yes. Oh, I love you.
Put that on your word list.
First of all, it's very interesting because it's written in a very kind of liminal space and time where you're going back and forth. There's present tense scenes, but you know straight away that Giovanni is going to die.
Yeah.
Or something very bad is about to happen. And there's this almost, I saw a Guardian review of this that looked at Giovanni's room through the lens of that specific like narrative device of disclosing initially straight away and the freedom of allowing the story to just play out.
I mean, it is an incredibly intense story. It is told entirely from David's perspective. And I think for me as a reader, what struck me was not just that I was in David's head, but it was how I felt about David as I went. I went from kind of liking him to getting really, really irritated with him to then fully detesting him and feeling sorry for him and then sort of all over again. And I think that to be able to offer that to a reader, present the reader with a character in that way, through only, I mean, barely 200 pages.
It's quite astonishing, isn't it?
It really is.
And actually, that's what Baldwin does so well, that the people, the characters, like human identity is not divisible. I think we can all agree that you can't separate one person from race, sexuality, class. Like nothing fits into neat demarcated boxes. And these characters are very complex. And you don't get that much information about anyone other than David.
No, which is when you have a novel in the first person, that's always what's very challenging about it. But I think in this book, I think there was some criticism, wasn't there, that he may have been abandoning racial politics because this is so much about sexuality.
Absolutely.
At a time when this topic would have been so controversial.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, you've got to see that as you read the book, which just makes it all the more brilliant and perfect to me.
So Baldwin moved to France in his 20s, and I think that's obvious that he had to have been in France because he depicts the country with so much just knowledge.
You will be walking through the streets of Paris. You will be in Giovanni's room. The title is The Room of Giovanni, the way to where they end up spending a lot of time together. Yeah. David moves in with Giovanni while his fiancée is in Spain. And then she returns, which is just a fascinating situation dealing with that angle. You know, he's met a man who he's fallen for in a big way while she's off in Spain and then returns. I mean, and then when the three of them meet, I mean, that is really explosive. A scene I absolutely love.
But it's interesting because David doesn't equate he knows the feelings he has for Giovanni are monumental and have changed his entire psyche. And there is these characters that dip in once or twice and they say to him, because the moment that he meets Giovanni is so visceral and powerful and everyone around them can see that. And they're like, your life has changed and you have a decision to make whether you're going to accept it or not. And but then when Giovanni is told about her, like the fiance, he's like, well, what does she think about you? And he's like, well, it's not important.
But what's fascinating, isn't it? Because when we talk about David and seeing everything through his eyes and being in his head, is that we know he had an experience when he was younger, but he never tells Giovanni that, does he? If I'm correct.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but I think he never tells him. So you know that you question David from the off. Of course you do. But we are all human. But I did think that fundamentally, like, there is a lot of cruelty here. There's a lot of shame. And
that's the central
I
theme.
Absolutely loved Giovanni. I love him. I really love him.
He was humorous. He was vivacious.
Very handsome. Not to be shallow, but in my mind, he was hot.
Oh yeah, had to be hot. Baldwin said that he felt that he had to write about America after he'd been very distanced from the country because it was in a psychological exile as well as a physical one. And for him, the personal is political. I think that's a very important. This is a love story, and we can look at it from a critical perspective, but everything is related to the politics of the time, and the characters see themselves through the stories they have told themselves about who they are and how they relate to the world around them. And it's very different. I would almost have loved to have read this in the 50s, like transporting myself back in that time. It must have been such a big moment. Whereas
absolutely.
Now, we're in a time when some of us, hopefully, queer identity is accepted. We just listened to Maddie, who talked about how some of her friends have had horrendous experiences with their families.
Their own families, yeah.
And you see, David does not confront his sexuality with his father. His mother died when he was young. But it's like not even a question of talking about who he truly is.
Correspondence with his father about accessing money.
Yes.
And can't be honest. And it's brilliant. I think it's, as you say, that these are ultimately private struggles that David is having he's having them in his head, or almost actually denying a lot of them to himself. But Baldwin shows us the much bigger social consequences of that in this story.
But in 200 pages,
exactly,
he does that. But then he also, it's like you get the public context and then you get a novel of interiority where you're in the mind of David. And, some people say it's too interior and there's a lot of self-reflection. But I think for a novel written in the 50s, it's so historically rooted and yet so contemporary. The dominance of shame, the queer community, the tragic framing, it feels timeless.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
It's just, I think with this book, literally just casting my eye over it again, there are things on every page that are not just beautifully written, but are just incredibly important.
Yeah. It's interesting because the psychological precision that he depicts, the shame, denial, and desire.
Yeah.
There's so much between. It's really interesting to me that he's able to show and portray that moment of connection. But it's a moment of connection that, if you read romance or fantasy, you get and the air stopped moving and the world stopped spinning. And this is written, it's a classic for a reason. The prose is poetic.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Serious. But he's talking about love in a way that one would talk about something that is, of significant importance as to culture.
Real weight.
Yes.
Really, real weight. I also, one thing that it made me think a lot about was the question of home and where is home? And just because we were talking about the poetic, I loved this part. It was this question of going back to America or staying in Paris. And this is a conversation, it's between Giovanni and David. And it goes, he smiled. Why? You will go home and then you will find that home is not home anymore. Then you will really be in trouble. As long as you stay here, you can always think, one day I will go home. He played with my thumb and grinned. Ne sais pas? Beautiful logic, I said. You mean I have a home to go to as long as I don't go there? He laughed. Well, isn't it true? You don't have a home until you leave it. And then when you have left it, you can never go back. Just love that.
Oh.
There's so many things like that, but it is poetry.
This is the kind of book. Yes, I'm a nerd. Yes, I get it. I almost wish I had done an English degree and I could have written about this because I just want to write about it.
For several years.
And if anyone has the immense honor of writing about this book in that way, I would say...
We're jealous. We're jealous.
Giovanni's room for me represents a very interesting conflict because in one way, there's confinement. The room becomes symbolic, entrapment. It represents things happen in that room that bring him intense levels of shame. He is confronting parts of his character that he has wanted to hide for years. And yet it also represents desire, intimacy, and safety.
Yeah,
because
there's safe space.
In that room, they are away from the world and they can be exactly who they want to be.
They can be together and in love, really.
So Giovanni's Room, it's the perfect title.
It really is.
Because it represents that there is
the perfect book.
I don't know if I would say it's the perfect book.
I would say it's perfect.
I know
it's up there. I'll put my reel in the show notes. I am going to do it. I'll link to it so you can.
I just think it's so interesting that like it's a safe place and it also represents everything that is so dangerous to him.
And actually thinking about it, isn't that the very nature of David himself too?
Yes.
Like that.
The conflict.
Anyway, I mean, I've got to say, well done, Chaya. Great choice. I'm so glad I read it. And I actually can't wait for our books that we've chosen for you guys to read in May. I will be honest, I have started one and I am absolutely loving it. It's Yesteryear by Caro Claire Burke. Now, I have had this on my shelf. We both had this on our shelves for a while, but we wanted to wait to read it so that we could pick it for our book club. And I have to tell you, I am quite a few pages in now, but I haven't been reading it for that long, about 195 pages in. I think this is so bloody brilliant. I am just absolutely loving it.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. And I know that we talk about, you know how I love undiscovered books.
Yeah.
This book is very discoverable because I think you'll be seeing it on every social media account of any bookstagrammer, booktuber. It is everywhere. But
it's
actually,
everywhere.
I will say that this book is hyped for a reason, and it is absolutely worthy of the hype that it is receiving. And I don't want to say too much. Shall I give a little plot summary? So it's the story of Natalie. And Natalie is, if you follow on Instagram, I guess the account is Ballerina Farm. It's a bit based on that. She is a trad wife living on this idyllic farm. It's this, imagine she's got lots of children. I want you to look at Ballerina Farm because that sort of sums it up. But we all know that trad wife is very, very in. And then one morning, she wakes up on her farm and she is actually living the trad life. She has gone, it seems, back in time. She's in a farm that's her farm, but it's not, with children that are hers, but they're not quite hers. And her husband, Caleb, who is Caleb, but not quite Caleb at all. It feels a bit Truman Showy. I'm not quite understanding how this has happened yet, but it's a bit like, what is going on? Where's her life gone? And how is she going to cope when she's actually got to live the life that she's created and put forward to all her millions of Instagram followers for all these years? It is funny, thought-provoking, spectacular, but I can only say that for the first 200 pages, but I think it's just brilliant. I'm really happy to be reading it.
And our older novel is a 1968 novel by Charles Portis called True Grit. Now, I saw an interview with Sophie's paramour, Patrick Radden Keefe, and
stop with that. He's going to think I'm obsessed with him, and he hasn't liked any. Well, he liked my one story.
And you've loved London Falling. You've loved London Falling, which we'll talk about another time. And Keefe talks about True Grit being narrated by Donna Tartt in the audiobook.
Yeah, I don't listen to audiobooks. It's not like because I take issue with them. I just have never really done it. And now I think I will because I love Donna Tartt's voice.
I just want to hear her narrate the book. And I was like, what is True Grit? I know there was a film, but I'd never ever heard of the book. It's a very kind of staunchly American book. It was published in 1968. It's told from the perspective of an elderly spinster named Mattie, who recounts the time 50 years ago when she was 14 and sought retribution for the murder of her father.
Just to say, if it's helpful, it's also quite slim. So if you're hoping to read both, I would say it's very doable because you'll get through this one quickly, and True Grit looks like it's going to be a good one.
And what's interesting is I wanted to read True Grit apart from the book club. I was just going to read it as part of my reading. And then I was looking at the themes. And I was like, there's a lot of connection with the concepts in Yesteryear. And that is going to be...
We will be talking about that.
We will be talking about what connects them. But it's, you've got the book of the moment, and then you've got a book that people reference so much. The cultural references of True Grit I hadn't picked up on. And then I was like, oh, that's the book that they were referring to.
I'm really excited about it. And I'm going to read it straight after this one so I can hopefully really get that kind of
And it's
link.
not a long novel.
No, it's not. And you'll get through this one quickly.
Yeah.
So we can't wait to come back and chat about these ones at the end of, it'll be the end of May that conversation will go out.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.